Let's get familiar with the Hyperscale Manager and its latest release. As you can see, here's the login screen with a username and a password. This is what you'll use to manage your systems, either local credentials or LDAP credentials. As you know, this is a server that's either on a virtual machine or a physical machine. And we can manage and monitor all of the A9000, the XIV, and Spectrum Accelerate systems. As you can see, here's the A9000 behind me. Here's the XIVs over here, or Spectrum Accelerate right there. As you can see, we can also talk about the cloud integration. Take a look. We also have the documentation link so that you can actually bring down all of the various different reference documents. We also have the social communities where you can actually directly communicate with the IBM Hyperscale Manager coders and developers. If you click, you notice you can use the QR code so you can actually use your mobile phone, or as you see below, you can actually click on the link. As you see, it will open up a browser and you can actually post things directly here at the IBM Developer Works. As you can see, as I scroll down, you see lots of Q&A or questions and answers, and you might be able to find your questions already answered. We're going to log in right now. As I click login, I'll log in. Here is the dashboard. Take a look. I actually have the three families in the upper right. Here's the two flash system A9000s. Here's the XIV. And here's Spectrum Accelerate. You can see that it's also off-premise, aka in the cloud. So this is truly a hybrid cloud storage solution and monitoring. I can also narrow down just by a particular family type or go to a particular server or a particular array. As I scroll down, you can actually see my individual systems that I could drill right down to. So here's the physical usage, and you can see by each particular family with a pop-up tip. Here's my Gen 3 XIVs, and last but not least, the Spectrum Accelerate. In this section, I have the virtual sizings, how much has been allocated. For example, here we have 545 terabytes out of 2.8 petabytes. And I can switch to how much is written. So there's my written out of actually allocated. So in the A9000, I have 545 allocated, but out of that allocation, I have 477 that's actually been written. You can see this charted underneath each of the gauges. As you can see down below, we actually have the performance for the IOPS of each particular family. I can also switch to latency. Notice each particular family has an individual live chart. When I go to the live chart, you can actually see the max or the minimums in each particular family. And this is a hot clickable chart where you can actually click on any of those particular systems listed and jump directly to them. As you can see, here it is on the XIV. I can do the same thing on latency. This will show the maximum latencies that's being observed on each particular family. And again, there's a live chart that I can directly click on and go to each particular system. I switch back to IOPS if I want to, and I can then see where things are going. Notice under my reduction and thin provisioning reporting, I can see how things are going with the ratio as well as the total savings. Remember, reduction is dedupe and compression for the flash system A9000. On XIV, it's only compression, and Spectrum Accelerate is none of the above. However, Spectrum Accelerate does have thin provisioning. You can see the total savings across the entire family, and if you switch the view to just one particular family or one system, this view actually is updated. Notice that I have a nice pop-up which actually shows everything that's going on this particular view with the actual numbers illustrated and defined. And if you notice, there is a checkbox in the upper left which I can actually click to see the metadata reduction savings with that included. If I click right here, I can actually redo the calculations with the metadata. Notice the ratio and the numbers have changed to reflect the internal metadata. Take a look under thin provisioning. You can see how much I have allocated versus how much is written. And again, remember this is using the included metadata checkbox. Here's my total reduction savings. If I go to System Info, I can actually see my mirrored volumes or my mapped volumes, as well as any quality of service or QoS limitations that have been applied. Notice that it's also hot, so I can go directly to those. Take a look at the top. I have the health or the health hub, and it actually shows my overall health, but each individual area has some areas that I could improve upon. I can take a look at these just by actually clicking on them or actually mouse overing some of them. For example, if I mouse over here, I can actually see with the -3 or the -6% over here. If I want to click on the tips, I can do that as well, which will give me additional information that'll help me achieve best of breed or best practices for our storage system. So for example, in this particular tip, I have 6 hosts that are not even mapped. So if I want to, I can actually click right there and go right to those hosts that are not mapped. Again, under availability, I see that I have some RPO lagging situation or recovery point objective. And notice the color itself is that it's quite a big alert. If I want to click on this particular area, I'll immediately go to those mirrors that I can hopefully take care of that recovery point objective. And in the capacity, it's -3% here. And again, my physical usage is 54%. So I can set that threshold differently if I'd like. Also, notice the tip here where I can actually reclaim some of this capacity by unused volumes. And I can click on that and go directly to those volumes which aren't being used. If I click on this particular bubble, you can see the -3% here that some of my hosts do not have redundant connections, which we could actually jump to and fix. And then also take a look at these other tips here. For example, the Spectrum Accelerate to the XIV doesn't have the multipath defined, and that's also done between the flash system and another flash system. Another host connectivity issue here that I can actually click on to define more paths. And if I want to actually define proactive support on those systems, I can actually do so right here. We can configure all these health tips just by clicking on this particular gear icon. So that way, if I want to change how much negativity each particular bubble represents, or even remove some of them. If I want to even turn off the tips, I can do so with that same gear icon. So if I don't even want to see the tips, I can turn them off. Let's filter my view to just the A9000s. I can either click here or over at the other area. And once I do, the dashboard updates. You'll see that it's updated up above. And it also shows it here as well. I can see my capacity. I can actually see how much is written versus how much is allocated out of the total system capacity. Here's my physical usage and the gauge. Notice the pop-up. And there's the ratio. And I can actually see how much I can reclaim by unused volumes. These are volumes that I can actually click on there and actually reclaim manually by going to them. Here's the pop-up that describes this, including the link. You can see now the performance with the IOPS and the latency. Again, those are live charts that you can click on. We can actually go to the efficiency as well as the health filtered just for these A9000s. Take a look. We can also adjust and take a look at our projected capacity. This is also modifiable so that you can use a variety of different projection methods that suit your particular business, from ratios to automatically dynamically adjusting based on the actual data being stored on the A9000s. Here's the pop-up, which actually allows us to take a look at that definition as well as changing those projections. Let's take a look at our filter that we can actually just look at a particular system like we just did right now. Notice here's a single flash system A9000 with the serial number, and if I want to actually see the hardware version of that, I can. I can switch to the XIV. Notice the color change and notice the serial number. And if I want to go to any other particular system, I can simply click on it like a Spectrum Accelerate. And again, you can see the off-premise cloud icon showing that it is not in my environment. Let's go to all of our systems again, and as you can see, I have my alert icon. It's flashing because it has some new alerts that I haven't yet reviewed. If I click on it, it actually shows the various different alerts. And again, this is from all of my systems. If I click on each particular one, I'll go to that particular alert so that I can actually take those actions. So notice I also have a commands log, so I can actually take any commands that I've done inside the GUI and then copy and paste that into my own command line scripts to be used later on using the command line tool or even Python. Take a look at the new icon, which allows me to create any new object or item. As you can see, volumes, hosts, clusters, a new user, or even add a new system to my monitoring. I can actually switch to the dark version as well as the light version. That's what this particular icon does. Again, all to your preference. Now, if I click on my settings, I can actually change my management server, including the cloud integration, as well as if I want to actually take a look at my capacity, trending, or forecasting reports. What's useful is with one click, I can get a nice report of my entire environment. My help icon shows different videos as well as links to various different documentation, and I can even download the XCLI so I can use that commands log and paste in commands directly there, including what's new. Under the user icon, I can actually sign in and out. On the left-hand side, we have the dashboard icon that shows the view you're currently looking at. Under systems and domains, I can actually take a look at various different systems, events, connectivity, including the quorum witness for hyperswap, as well as the hardware view. I have all my statistics, including volume, statistics, VOS, quality of service, pool and system capacities, as well as host capacity, and forecasting. I have my pools and volumes views right here. Here's where I can actually drill into my hosts and clusters. Here's where all my remote views are, all my mirrors, all my migration, and even hyperswap active replication. Here's where I can actually change my users and groups, and also if I want to modify my management server and all my security settings. And if I want to actually ask a question, I have the QR code as well as the direct link as we saw on the login page. As you can see, we're on the dashboard, and here's my tab that I can actually add even more tabs. So I can have many different views all at the same time. These tabs can have any of the views we saw earlier today, and we're going to populate some now. If I right-click, I can actually close some of those tabs or some of the other options just with one particular click. As you see, I can also close individual tabs by themselves. I can populate any of these new tabs with anything on the left-hand side, these icons, or I can go to the filter. This is our type ahead navigation filter, and I can put in any number of metadata items that I'm searching for. And notice I can actually filter across all systems or across a particular system for one of those items. So right now I'm going to search across all of my systems, and notice how I can start taking a look at pools, volume, system, domain, hosts, and it shows everything in parentheses that currently matches that search criteria. Here's all those various suggestions, as you can see, and also a history. So any searches I've done recently will actually pre-populate in the search field for me to reuse again. Again, for each object, it'll have in parentheses how much it's matched or how much it sees in the entire environment. Here's 30 pools, 199 volumes. I have 4 domains, 19 hosts, and 12 mirrored volumes. I have currently 12 snapshots and 0 clusters. Another great feature is that we're organizing this list based on how each user actually uses the Hyperscale Manager. So it'll prioritize various contexts higher than others based on the frequency and the time of day usage. That's right, the Hyperscale Manager actually will learn each user's behaviors and try its best to present the correct context each time you use the filters. Let's go to volumes. You can see I have 199 volumes. Not only can I click on this particular suggestion, but I actually type any series of characters or letters, and it'll actually do a type ahead matching across the entire environment. Notice how the HSM has taken those 3 characters and matched it across every bit of metadata in its inventory. The HSM will also suggest numerous different search criteria based on what you've typed. As you can see, we'll also put in parentheses any matches of any of these particular suggestions. As you see, I can click on volume and I'll automatically begin a nice search criteria because it's updated saying, okay, volumes based on, and as you can see that I have all of the usual metadata secondary criteria listed here. And for example, if I type is, it'll then update that search criteria to show me even further matches. It'll continue building this out as I highlight any of the particular suggestions that I could then click on. So for example, if I add mapped, you see that I can actually filter down to those volumes that are mapped. And if I click here, I'm going to grab all my volumes that are mapped and then click on the search. It'll then bring up those 146 volumes that are mapped. One of the great features is that any view you can export as a CSV. I can actually change these particular columns as well by moving them around. One of the great features is that I can add more columns just by right-clicking. As you can see, capacity and belonging. And I can also add mapping. If I want to add some of those, I can do that. It automatically updates, including quality of service. There's also additional columns I can add. As before, I can actually change any of these columns, and then once they're changed, I can then go back and click on the CSV of the updated view. We can save this column set by right-clicking and then going to save this column set for any particular views. Each volume belongs to a particular system, and as I open up the column, you can actually see that the system is displayed, and I can actually jump to that particular system. Here's the other particular icon to actually navigate, and notice the mouse over text to confirm this. This applies to all my columns. As you see, I can navigate to this particular host object, or this particular pool object. Let's inspect one of the volumes. By clicking on it, I can actually update my right-hand side with my hub and spokes, with my single volume in the center, and this would actually update if I have more than one selected. Instantly, we can see exactly the properties of this volume. For example, it is not part of any replication, notice the 0, and the quality of service, again another 0 with the dotted lines confirming that there's nothing there, or a consistency group, another 0. As you can see though, it is mapped to a particular host. And again, those dotted lines meaning there's nothing in there, and a solid line means there is something inside it. And more importantly, the belonging tab shows exactly where that volume resides, what system, for example, domain or pool, any of the other subsets. The inspector is down below, which actually shows more details about what's selected above. Notice I can actually see the capacity information, and if I want to see more details about this particular volume, just by clicking on the up arrow, I can actually see the WWN. We can actually change the name by just clicking on the name field and then editing and clicking on apply. Let's find the volumes that are just on my XIV Gen 3. If I click on my filter, I can then select on the XIV systems. So here's my volumes which are on any XIV. If I click on one of them, the inspector comes up. You can actually see its volume specifics. I can change the name if I want, or that I can actually save more by clicking on compression. Notice the compression button. If I click on the compression button, it brings up the warning, and I can just click on apply if I want to. I can also change the volume size just by clicking inside the volume size text field and clicking apply. Notice the graph automatically updates. We'll even show you the potential compression savings right here. This information is also displayed on the right-hand side in more of a decimal format. I can also do the same with multiple volumes, say 5 volumes. You can see the hub immediately updates on the right-hand side, including the inspector down below. Instantly, I can see the performance of those 5 volumes down below here with the IOPS, latency, or bandwidth. HSM is dynamic so that if I add 2 volumes to this selection, notice the 7 are now displayed down below, as well as on the right-hand side where I actually have the hub and the inspector updated. We talked about belonging earlier. Let's explore it. So for example, you can see those 7 volumes and all their particular metadata. You can see they're in one system and one domain and one pool and no snapshots amongst them. This is listed below in the domain name as well as the pool, and if there's any snapshots or creating a new one, I can also change the pool these volumes are in just by selecting a new pool or creating a new one and clicking apply. Not only can we see those 7 volumes are part of one pool, but if I actually click on the P here, I'll actually jump to that particular pool itself. As you can see, my view is updated, so I'm actually just looking at that particular pool by itself with this custom filter, and I can actually see the metadata about it. Again, on the right-hand side, I can actually see the inspector, including all of the details about this particular pool in a decimal readout. If I want to go back, all I have to do is click on the back arrow inside the HSM. It'll take me back to the original 7 volumes which I had selected. Let's focus on the statistics. Here's the IOPS. If I click on it, it'll actually expand and show me the IOPS for those particular 7 volumes. Notice they're listed on the right-hand side here, the max and the minimums. I can also see the totals, as well as click on each individual volume to directly go to it. I can also change the graph itself, so I can look at historic, latencies, bandwidth, and I can further narrow it down by looking at only a particular array interface if I wish. If I select another volume, the HSM automatically updates by collecting the extra data. You can see the 8 volumes selected there, as well as over on the right-hand side. And there's a chart showing the 8 volumes with the new max and minimums. I'm going to zoom out and actually let's add another chart. Just by clicking on Add, I have another chart that I can now change this chart to show, for example, latencies. At the same time, I'm looking at IOPS. All of this is in real time. If I zoom out more, I can add even more graphs. Notice that the live graph allows me to compare between 2 charts at the same time. I can also change this graph so that I can actually see more of a history view. So here's now my historic latency, as well as historic IOPS. To make sure the HSM is showing the exact same time range, I can click on the lock icon right here. With the lock icon checked, now I can scroll and both charts are in complete synchronization with each other. This is especially useful if I change the range on one particular chart so that it actually does it on both. You can also change the other filters such as read and write, hit and misses, and any particular block sizes. I can also change the view in different ways. For example, if I want to take a look at a domain or system or a host. Here's a great example. Let's click on the mapped host so we can actually see the mapped host for these 8 volumes. And now we are seeing the historic latency from that particular host view for those 8 volumes. I could do the same for any snapshots. As you see, there's no snapshots. I could also do the same for any mirrored volumes. And as you see, I don't have any mirrored volumes for these particular 8 volumes displayed. Let's explore the Actions menu. Notice here it is on the upper right-hand side, where I can actually do the same with right clicks. This allows me to do any of these actions to the selected 8 volumes. For example, mirroring such as hyperswap, mapping, consistency groups, or even doing a capacity forecast. I can do some snapshots as well. For example, just by clicking here, I can actually take the snapshot of all these volumes. Once I click Apply, take a look. I've actually received some errors. There wasn't enough space for that. So I click Apply, and then I click back to the pool, and I can then adjust the pool size so that I have more space to complete this operation. I can even explore the mapping. Just by clicking on the mapping icon, I can see the host that it's currently assigned. I can add another one just by selecting one or adding one. And then I can even change the LUN IDs. I can select a different one, and then with one click on the Apply, I will map all of those 8 volumes to that new host. In the Actions menu, I can actually explore the capacity and trend forecasting report by going under Pool Capacity and clicking here. As you saw earlier, I can actually go back to that particular pool where these volumes are just by clicking on the P, which brings me up my pool view. Notice down below the decimal readout including all that's written, the allocation, as well as when we expect it'll hit its warning threshold based on the trending and analysis. I can change the name of the pool, or I can actually investigate the allocation and even change the allocation right here. When I click on Stored, I can actually bring up that particular information under this tab as well. As you can see, in both cases, I can actually take a look at this in both decimal as well as graphical formats. I can actually take a look at the usage of this particular pool just by clicking here, which will open up a nice chart, and it shows over time as well as a forecast. You can see how the forecast is actually being calculated based on its analysis. I could also accomplish this by adding those particular columns to my view. Here I am going to check on these particular boxes, which will add it to my view, and now I can see the minor as well as the warning. I can scroll over and see the other column right here, which is the major threshold. I can also see the growth rate. Take a look, I'll expand this out, and you can actually see the 154 gigabytes a month. I can actually get rid of the custom filter so I can see all of my pools at the same time. When I do it, I can now organize them by the growth rate so I can actually see which pools are growing the most. Now that I've clicked on the growth rate and it's actually in descending order, you can actually see also when it's going to hit the threshold. I can also select all my volumes with a Control A, and notice the update, 30 pools, and I can follow this in belonging and see all 199 volumes by clicking here. Just by clicking, I can explore all those volumes. Notice the display has updated itself. From here, I can actually jump to the mapping and see those 13 hosts. With another click, I can explore just those 13 hosts. We can see how each host is mapped and through which system. If it was part of more than one system, we would actually see that updated in the system area. When I click on each particular host, I can see the display updates with its capacity information as well as its connectivity. And I can actually bring up the details of how it's connected, in this case for iSCSI. From the host, I can actually jump back to the actual system. In this case, you can see the domain and the system for this particular host listed. I can select all of my hosts, and then the display update showing all the systems they're connected to. By clicking on the S, I will jump to those particular systems. I can see the capacity information on each particular storage array. I can also take a look at those particular alerts. If I click on just the A9000 by itself, I can jump to the hardware view. This shows me a nice 3D view with all the individual components that I can actually drill down on if I wished. The same works also on my XIV Gen 3, where the updated display shows me the various different components and modules. I'll switch back to my A9000, and as you can see, the display updates. I'll go to the hub, and you can see the compression and capacity information, and take a look. I have one target, which means that I am connected to another A9000. And I can actually take a look at that connectivity. I can see the two systems. I can even drill down even further to see how those modules are connected between which ports and which modules. Under the Actions menu, I can actually take a look at any of those items, including the capacity report and also the projected system capacity. We talked about this earlier, so I can actually change how it actually is calculated. This is where we can actually adjust what is shown in the main dashboard by using a combination of various different system values or by manually specifying in the checkboxes below. Let's create a new volume right now. I'll go to my volumes. I'll actually click on the plus sign. And now I need to name this volume or set of volumes. I'll use test demo. I'll create 3 of them. How about 100 gigabytes each? And I can actually change the sizing. Notice that I have a suffix so that it names it appropriately. Now I need to select a system and a pool, or I can grab a particular pool and it'll automatically populate the system. When I click on Create, the HSM will then set about those tasks, creating those 3 new volumes. The updated display will load in just a second. You'll see they are selected, and the hub is updated with those 3 volumes. But you'll see that they are all 0 except for the volume size, which is created appropriately. And now, if I click on Mapping, let's map them. I can click on Add with the plus sign, choose a particular host, or add one. And then with the auto ones, it'll now automatically map those 3 volumes to that particular host with 1 click. Now let's mirror them. All I have to do is click on Add an Async Mirror in this case. I'll choose another system. I then have to choose a particular pool on that secondary system. I can then auto-create a volume or manually and then choose the RPO. I can then click on Apply and the HSM will go about those particular tasks, creating those volumes on the secondary system. And now the display has been updated. It shows those 3 new volumes with the async mirrors showing the 3 volumes. Notice the HSM updates itself with both the left and the right hand side showing both the dotted as well as the solid lines. Take a look at that mirroring either here or on the left-hand side. We added a new icon to show all of the information at a moment's notice. Thanks for watching this Hyperscale Manager demo.